Rock and roll in the 70s had become so bloated and a spectator sport where people no longer danced.
People were reenacting their frustration with how rotten the rock and roll scene had become.
I mean, you can tell, like looking at pictures from the late 60s, you can see about 1968, 1969, kids all quit dancing. They're sitting there looking at the guys aping Pink Floyd, and punk rock is supposed to be necessarily an audience participation sport.
This is a brief history of Austin punk, as told in 3 parts by the people that were there. And this is part 1.
Eat death, scum.
Eat death, scum.
Eat scum death.
Eat death, scum.
Eat death, scum.
But before we get to the punk stuff, there's some things you should know about Austin, about Texas, and about the music that comes out of the hill country. Starting with Conjunto music. Today, Conjunto, Norteño, and Tejano are huge throughout Latin America. And the birthplace of those genres is the San Antonio, Austin area, also known as the Hill Country. This is where it became an influence on the local punk scene.
The Mexican Americans and the Germans were picking cotton. At the end of the day, they would break out the accordions and they would have like a little jam session. And that's what brought all the cotton pickers or sharecroppers and people together in the evening. Now the conjuntos, they played at the ranches. At the ranchos, what they would do, they would take a big empty area and sweep the dirt around. And when they dance, you see nothing but dirt coming out, dust all over the place. Lorenzo Caballero, from the 1930s, 1940s, he would play the theaters and movie theaters during intermission. His gimmick was he would play with his tongue. He would also set his guitar on fire. He would put it on the floor and put a chicken on top of it, and the chicken danced on it, and
In the 60s, Italian accordion maker Farfisa started making an inexpensive synthesizer that could make anyone sound like an experienced accordion player.
The mid-60s marked the introduction of the compact Farfisa organ. The use of the organ helped catapult the song Wooly Bully by Sam the Shams to immense popularity.
Uno, dos, 1, 2, 3, 4.
That whole question mark and the Mysterians, Sir Douglas Quintet, organ-driven garage punk sound was like being picked up as an influence, and you had somebody like Joaquin Carrasco, who was a German boy named Joe Teutsch.
Well, technically, Joaquin Carrasco was part of the punk scene, and he had El Molino, and they were playing there, way before, the big buzz caught on.
He was playing in Conjunto bands and Tejano bands, this white kid. He added Ramones beats to, that basic She's About a Mover sound, and creates what he calls Nuevo Huevo.
In the 60s, psychedelic music in Texas was distinguished by its bluesy gospel edge. And no artist in this genre is mentioned more by punks than the 13th Floor Elevators and frontman Roky Erickson.
There was some psychedelic stuff in there too with Roky Erickson and all of that. But then it just sort of Rocky was doing punk stuff.
It was Negroes, Records, Roky Erickson.
Yep.
And little I know, they had spirited him out of the mental institution and pumped him full of drugs and alcohol so he could play that show. And everyone said it was just amazing. But little me, no one ever told me these things.
I don't know if you ever read that book, the I Mind book. It's got some good stories. There's a lot of stories about Tommy Hall, but Tommy Hall had this thing called the Tommy Hall schedule. And that was basically, he made the band take acid every day. Everybody was crazy in his family to begin with. He became a basket case, basically. Then the Elevators, they all got busted for mushrooms. Rocky pleaded mentally ill. He had to go to a criminally insane Terrell Hospital, which is where they gave him the insulin treatments and the electroshock. Insulin was, they wrapped you up with like 50 wet sheets and then shot you full of insulin, and then you would just like, it was just pure torture, basically. He figured out a way to get out of there. Is he started playing music about Christianity, but they let him out, and then Doug Somm got together with him and paid to have that session done.
Dog, two-headed dog, I'd be working in the prison with a two-headed dog, two-headed dog, two-headed dog, I'd be working.
It's interesting just how star-crossed the Elevator story is. The rumor has it that he taught Janis Joplin how to scream when the Elevators were out in San Francisco. And, he got that from Little Richard.
By the 70s, Austin had developed a reputation for being the long-haired, skinny-dipping, pot-smoking center of the Southwest. And certain country musicians liked the sound of that. They were fed up with the hickification of country music. So in 1972, Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson moved to Austin and started the Cosmic Cowboy movement.
Attracting all this attention is a mixture of traditional country western and contemporary rock and roll, a blend that Willie Nelson and others say had to happen eventually because of Austin's unique audience.
Now Lone Star sipping and skinny dipping and steel guitars and stars.
Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings were reacting against Nashville when they came along in 74 and said, no, I'm going to turn the rhythm section up on my recordings. I'm not going to play any damn thing I want to. God damn it.
Myself, Jerry Jeff Walker, Michael Murphy, all the people who are more or less established down here in this area want it to stay the way it is. They want it to keep growing naturally. But we don't want a bunch of high rollers, rip-off artists from other parts of the world to come in here and foul it up for the rest of the people.
God damn it.
Oh, now baby, wait.
One of the Cosmic Cowboys' favorite creatives was this guy, Doug Somm of the Sir Douglas Quintet. He became kind of a godfather of Austin punk when he teamed up with Roky Erickson.
Austin's first punk rock single. Before we even had a scene, we had a punk rock record as part of that spate of indie releases that happened in 75, like Piss Factory by Patti Smith and Little Johnny Jewel by Television, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo by Perubu. Rocky's Case, it was Two-Headed Dog, produced by Doug Somm, who also played guitar on it, abusing a new effects pedal that had come out on the market called the Face Shifter. The act made its debut at an Austin Horror Film Festival that was being conducted at the Ritz, which was a dilapidated old 40s movie house that eventually became a venue around here. It was the night that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre premiered. The act was a sensation. And that officially launched Roky as a solo artist.
It also launched the career of University of Texas RTF major Tobe Hooper, who created the creepy as fuck soundtrack to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre using things around the house. Hooper's success inspired the next generation of RTF majors, a lot of whom were Austin's first punks.
Right then, when it was happening, they were just a bunch of RTF, artsy-fartsy kids.
RTF department is overlooked in the history of punk rock.
Right. Because they would make the music, they would film the music, they would put the videos, this is before all the different ways we have now to share the music.
And those students were naturally drawn to the newest wave of bands coming out of New York, Detroit, and London.
When I was looking for that new thing, I didn't quite know it was punk, but I loved David Bowie, and I loved Roxy music, and I loved the B-52s, and I loved Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground.
First show I saw at the Armadillo was Frank Zappa. I found out about Patti Smith and John Cale. I was aware that a punk scene was happening in Britain. So by the winter, at the end of '77, I went to the mall and bought the Sex Pistols record.
Most of these bands were billed as new wave or metal, but on July 14th, 1977, the first band to be billed as punk played Austin. It was the Ramones. They played the Armadillo World headquarters, and almost no one was there.
Dee Dee had his cheering section, and it was always Dee Dee, Dee Dee.
They played 2 sets in one day in July in Austin, which is kind of astonishing, but you can see the band is definitely sweating even more than normal. The later show where Dee Dee's got a black shirt, he's just drenched.
By the time the Ramones returned to Austin, a number of alternative acts like AC/DC, Iggy Pop, and Elvis Costello played the Armadillo World headquarters. But it was the Ramones' Runaway show in February of 1978 that people seem to remember the most.
Hell yeah, that was awesome. I had just bought a full-face gas mask from an Army surplus place. So I took it to the show. We got there early enough so we could get right up at the edge of the stage, right in the middle. And when the Runaways came out on stage, of course, you know, you come out on stage and you look at a crowd and there's a gas mask looking back at you as the one thing that's not like everything else. And they thought that was hilarious. And they were laughing at each, pointing me out to each other. And so they did the whole show to me, like did the whole lascivious little tongue, the whole thing. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I don't know why Sherry thought it was really punk rock with all the blood, but she did. It's pretty funny.
Both of them it was just so exciting to see, an all-girl punk band, for one thing. And then to have them come out.
I want to be sedated! 1, 2, 3, 4!
They just started and they didn't stop till they were through. They'd finish a song 2 minutes long and they go, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we start the next song,
It was so cool. The Ramones was so cool. They had the sign with the Gabba Gabba Hey. They had the funny kind of Zippy the Pinhead kind of character. It was the first time I ever pogoed.
In between those two shows was the San Antonio show that changed Austin music forever.
Well, let's just start with this. On January 8th of 1978, we went to San Antonio and saw the Sex Pistols.
It was at Randy's Rodeo, a converted bowling alley, honky-tonk, low ceiling, funky place. A lot of people were there. It was packed. The crowd was a mix.
In Star Wars, where they have the bar, all the creatures, it was like that. There's all these crazy creatures, everything from rednecks to hippies to punk rockers to just weirdos.
There were rock and rollers, there were glam rockers, there were college students, there were people who definitely were punk rocker fans, and then there were there were rednecks there.
I came here to openly cause dissent against the Sex Pistols because I believe negatively in what they're doing.
I was right in the front. We worked our way. Margaret is like, we're going to be on the front row.
The Pistols come out, guns blazing. The sound is really loud and raw, and Johnny Rotten came out taunting the crowd, and there was an instantaneous eruption of stuff flying through the air, beer cans, cups, even pizzas being thrown at the band, and them loving it. It was what they wanted. They wanted to stir that up. They wanted that energy.
Eddie Munoz and the singer of the Next, Ty Gavin, were spurred on by this guy named Tom Wright, Hey, psst, open up his trench coat. He had these pie plates and whipped cream. Throw these at Johnny Rotten whenever he comes on. Yeah, Rotten. I did later interview him about the Randy's Rodeo show. And yes, I busted Eddie Yost, John, and his reaction was, "What a very stupid thing. The young man should have come backstage. We could have talked about his horrible jealousy problem. He could have shared a slice of pie with me. I could have stood a nice slice of pie."
Sid kept quoting lines verbatim from Iggy Pop from a concert that was released as Metallic KO, and the crowd was yelling insults at him, and he was yelling insults back, and people were throwing stuff at him.
Listen, I've been acting by better than you. Come on.
He would say, "Haha, missed me."
Is it time for a riot, girls? Riot!
And Sid Vicious had all those lines down. We expected it to be a big deal, and in a way it was smaller than we expected because it was there at that funky club.
Get a towel for the egg yolk. I don't want to get caught with yolk in my face.
A lot of people that came down from Austin, came from Houston, came from Dallas to see the show. A month later, they were in bands.
When we came home from that, there were all kinds of people there. Kathy Valentine was there, Jesse Sublett was there. All of these people a lot of whom went back and started punk rock bands.
For example, Phil Tolstead, Dan Puckett, and John Burton were there, all of whom later became the Huns. Kathy Valentine, Carla Olson, Marilyn Dean, and bass player Jesse Sublett were there. They were already in the Violators. Sublett was on his first date with Lois Ridgewine, who he's still married to today. Sublett was also in the Skunks with Eddie Munez, who was there. Valentine later joined the Go-Go's, Olson the Textones, and Munez the Plimsolls. Steve Earle was there. Barry Smith and Hector Saldana of the Crayolas were there. Barry's ticket was purchased with the allowance money of his brother Jeff Smith, who later fronted the Hickoids. Buff Parrott and Glenn Taylor were at the show. They later formed the Dicks along with Gary Floyd, who saw the Sex Pistols in San Francisco. Ken Hoag and Margaret Moser were there, him being a photographer and she a music writer. They were meeting up with Bill Bentley of the Austin Sun, who was writing a piece for Larry Flint. University of Texas RTF major Lewis Black was there, and he later co-founded the Austin Chronicle. Larry Seaman of the Standing Waves was there, and South by Southwest co-creator Roland Swenson was there too.
Yeah, so it really was a wild night. It was just fantastic. Yeah.
Rotten. I did later interview him about the Randy's Rodeo show. John was kind of taken aback when I explained to him the catalytic effect the Randy's Rodeo show had on what happened in Austin. I think that his bitterness has blinded him to how he has affected the world and the impact that he had. And I think when he's presented with a very positive example of what the Sex Pistols wrought, it humbles him, and he's very grateful to find this out.
And right away, the guys that lived across the street from me were all in a band called The Next. One of the guys, he told me about a show happening at this Mexican bar called Raul's.
Raul's Club.
Raul's, the club.
We booked a gig at Raul's, it turned out it was like just a couple of days after the Sex Pistols. So when we played Raul's, there was all this energy built up, anticipation, and it was very exciting. I think there were probably less than 100 people there, but you could tell from the energy and the response of the people that, this was happening.
that night was an incredible success. As I understand it, only 30 people showed up that night, but soon enough they're telling two friends and so on and so on and so on. Suddenly, okay, we've got punk rock in this town.
I was like, okay, this is something I can get behind.
And pretty soon it's like every RTF student across the street at UT is coming down to Raoul's and checking out this crazy punk rock shit. It's funny because in the early chapters of my Austin punk book, I actually counted down. I would say the Violators are Austin's first punk band. The Skunks are Austin's second punk band. I was literally numbering everybody, including the Next. They were number 4.
Terminal Mind.
The Violators.
And the Skunks.
Standing Waves.
The Mistakes and the Reactors.
A sort of prog band called Project Terror.
The Negroes.
And the Womb Elements.
The Inserts.
And the F Systems.
Sharon Tate's Baby.
D-Day.
The Stains.
Lynn Keller and the Record.
By the time we get to the Huns, we're losing count.
Like the Huns were like off the charts, and I know for Biscuit in particular, he was dedicated to the Huns.
That was September of '78.
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
the Huns, yeah. I was there. Yes, and they had this song called "Eat Death Scum." And the cops were like, it was like an obscenity thing or something.
Well, no, there's undercover cops in the audience.
Undercover cops, she knows more about
Yeah, I totally know about it. Mm-hmm. And so the uniformed officer Bridgewater came in the front door and tried to talk to the band to tell them to stop playing. And then Phil Tolstead starts singing Eat Death Scum.
Yeah, and he tried to kiss the cop when
and
the cop
then
tried to bust
all
him.
the undercover cops busted loose and started a riot.
And my friends hustled me out of there. My friends from the TV ranch.
The Huns came out. They were loud and weird and abrasive. And then the cops came. And Manny, the original bass player, he's the guy who ran out the back door when the trouble started. And I think he disappeared. Oh, yeah, he hit a cop with his bass and then ran out the back door. And I think he hid out in Florida for a while.
I was smoking a joint when the bus started, and guys came running out and screaming, "The police are here busting the joint," and we climbed over the fence and escaped, and I never went back inside. But, But the funny thing is, the punks all thought the Huns were a bunch of posers because they were all into costumes and theatrics.
And Phil Tolstead was like this Nazi wannabe or something.
Well, he wasn't at that point yet.
Not yet, but that's where he went later.
The group's volatile lead singer, Phil Tolstead, charged with inciting a riot. This incident becomes the latest in a young and sordid career that has featured not only the standard spewing forth of obscenities and hate, but has also included mock crucifixions and the ridicule of God in prayer. The confrontation is said to have begun as Tolstead pointed at a uniformed police officer while singing the Huns song, "Eat Death, Scum."
That line almost killed me.
Arrested that night were Richard Dorset, who allegedly threw a trash can on stage to get the riot started. He was a manager at Inner Sanctum Records. Nick Barbaro asked a police officer, "Are you proud of yourself, asshole?" He helped found the Austin Chronicle and South by Southwest. Bobby Morales, the bouncer at Raoul's, was arrested for trying to break up a fight. Phil Tolstead kissed a cop. Richard Jones was arrested. And Bob Goss was arrested later at the police station. All 6 men spent the night in jail and were released the next day.
The Huns show did let the rest of the world know that we'd had something going.
Yeah, Raoul's up until that moment, Raoul's was not on anybody's map other than the small horror of bands.
But it was shocking. I mean, the pictures proved it. It was a great, exciting night.
Roy and Joseph Gonzalez, and I forget the name of the big guy who was the bouncer at the front, Bobby Morales, that was his name. They created a playground where, you know, Austin's first punk generation could go wild and, you know, just make their mistakes and road test things. And, you know, it was the Petri dish that created everything.
This was before we all had adopted the black and the spiked hair and the clothespins. That all kind of came with it. But we were just dressing up like in our Halloween costumes and stuff to perform, and the music was all over the map. I mean, people were playing violins and pots and pans, and you know, it wasn't the Ramones off the bat.
There was one place to play. We went there every night just to see whatever was happening. And that's really what created the scene environment, was that it was a place that you would go to not knowing what was going to happen just because you knew something was going to happen.
Crazy little things like the spelunkers here. There are tons of, caves in hill country. And those people, they used to go to Mexico and pick up peyote and bring it back. And that just had a really big influence on the culture. And it's really kind of hard to define, or maybe somebody else could do it, but it's a fact.
Well, because Austin is a cool scene. I mean, I've been up there a couple of times for concerts at Armadillo, and, you know, it was like paradise, you know, back then, 70 and 77. There's still like a little village around the university, and people even have like little record shops in their little tiny half a house. You know, they have a little record shop there, and I remember buying incense and peppermints on 45 for my girlfriend. You know.
It was really a beautiful thing to see how unhomophobic the Austin scene was, and just how sweet it was. Very few fights, very little problem. That was beautiful days gone by, the Austin and Houston punk rock scene.
I've got to play on the Clubfoot stage topless in my punk
She's
band.
a topless enthusiast.
Well, I couldn't play bass, but no one noticed when I played topless. So.
Yeah.
I have more in common. I have those shared memories with people, you know, and you know, some of the sorriest shit you ever saw in front of, you know, but for the 8 or 20 or 40 people there, it was epic in its own way because of whatever little incident, you know.
Oh, Austin was insane. I mean, in the 70s, well, you were there.
I've been thinking about real love. I'm sure about Electra. I know I love her so much, man. Just answer one question I have. What is real love made of? My love is like the stars above. Just answer one question. What are the stars made of? These days are my nights. When it comes, everything is lost, all my love is running. The sun comes up like the stars and I'm chased by the day. It makes me wonder what everything is worth.
My mind was open.